Parenting can be one of the greatest joys of a person's life, but it can also be one of the toughest challenges they will ever encounter. And if a parent is dealing with mental health issues such as depression or anxiety, it can be a truly heartbreaking time for a family. So Amy Bell has been sticking around with us to take a look at this issue today. I think it's a good one, Amy.
Thank you.
A lot more acceptance and discussion around mental health these days for sure, but there's still a lot of stigma too, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. And I think, whether it's postpartum depression, generalized anxiety, or any other mental health challenges while you're raising your older kids, it can really be devastating because I think you're expected to feel this joy and connection to your kids, and then anything else feels like a failure to society and to your family. And then, of course, we've got social media that's just filled with all of these like weirdly relaxed and very well-dressed parents and their tastefully dressed children. And so the bar for parents seems to have been set increasingly high.
No, it's true. That veneer, you just got to scratch beneath the surface sometimes. And it seems like no matter how much we try and normalize these kinds of feelings, there are still a lot of people who try to keep their struggles to themselves, right? We're doing okay. I mean, especially parents. Why parents?
I think, as I mentioned, it still does feel like a failure. And even though, along with the joys of parenting, there's also isolation and doubt and fear. And parenting can be really monotonous and maybe not at all what we expected. And the majority of those emotions, unfortunately, do fall on those who identify as women. Dr. Mahel Regev is a registered psychologist and marriage and family therapist, and she works extensively with people experiencing depression, both during and after pregnancy, and then with families impacted by mental health issues.
First of all, women are 3 times more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues than men. And so you have to ask yourself why, and there's a whole slew of research that goes into looking at why women are more prone to mental health issues or challenges. And the obvious answer is hormones. The less obvious answer is our society, the place of women in society. That's a whole area that also has been researched. And yes, when women are put in a disadvantaged position in society, they tend to be more anxious, more depressed.
And that's not to minimize the mental health struggles of any parent or caregiver, but the numbers are clear, and those who give birth and or identify as female are more likely to face these issues. And so as a society, we need to recognize this and work to support and help them.
I mean, we used to live in extended families and extended communities, and everybody was taking care of kids. Now the situation is that moms are mostly alone with their kids, and it's not good for us. It's not good for our mental health, and we need to be aware of that, and we need to reach out so that isolation and loneliness, which are a big part of depression, is eradicated.
And I think parenthood can be one of the loneliest times in a person's life, and acknowledging that's okay. So we kind of need to stop putting parenting on this pedestal and recognize the toll that it can take.
Sure. Now, parenting has always been tough, Amy. I mean, our parents didn't even call it parenting back then, but how do you think that has impacted each successive generation?
I think that's a really good point, because we might discuss it more candidly now, but mental illness has impacted families for centuries, and that can leave a lasting legacy. Sarah Cragen Aichi has dealt with her own mental struggles as a single mother to her now teenage daughter, but her mothering was informed by her own experience in growing up with a mom who dealt with a devastating mental illness that ultimately led to her death from suicide.
It does put a lot of pressure, but it also, for me personally, gave me insight as to, what helped me as a child, and what supported me. And then it also gave me the view of how a child could be affected by a parent who's struggling. I'm not saying that I ever dealt with it the best way, but I feel like it did help me to know how to best support my child who might be experiencing me struggling.
And so Sarah's never shielded her own daughter from her personal battles with mental health issues, and she wants her daughter to grow up knowing that mental health is a personal priority and that getting help can benefit the entire family.
It's tough to acknowledge yourself as a parent struggling and wanting to be strong for your kids and not have them maybe know how much you're struggling, but then at the same time wanting to be transparent, be open, but also, like show your kids how you're trying to access support for yourself and not being ashamed to admit that you are struggling or that you are getting support or that you're taking care of yourself and putting yourself first.
Amy, it's interesting, of course there's a need to focus on mothers, but of course fathers can also be impacted by mental health issues.
Yeah, and those issues can be exactly the same. So depression, anxiety, OCD, men have and also face their own societal pressures and expectations. Matt Seitz has dealt with depression for much of his own life, and it wasn't discussed or properly treated at first. He knows that it was a really confusing time for his family, and it did impact his 4 children.
So I had my own struggle, and I think to some degree because of that, I wasn't paying enough attention to my kids. I was all wrapped up in myself and my feelings and my grief and whatnot. And I think they suffered for that. And, what's wrong with Dad? Why is he acting like this? He's quiet, he wanders off, he's by himself, that type of thing. And, that's hard for them. That's hard for them to process. After years of, be bouncing off the walls and having fun with them all the time and that type of thing.
But by receiving treatment and being open with his emotional help, he's not only a more present parent, he was actually able to recognize that one of his own sons was struggling with depression. And because of his willingness to share his experiences with his son, that helped him feel less alone and less isolated.
I started recognizing, the telltale signs. He would isolate, keep to himself downstairs in the dark, started wearing black, that type of thing. And over the past few years, as we've gotten closer, I've seen more and more of that. I think it's really helped him for me to identify with him and say, look, I was dealing with this when I was your age. I've been dealing with it most of my life. And again, it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. There's help. This is genetic, and some of it's environmental or circumstantial. And just hearing that, I think, has helped him.
Oh, my. And just hearing that, I think, can help so many others, Amy.
I hope so. And, any one of us can face mental health challenges, but for parents, and yes, especially mothers, it can really be difficult and very dark. And there can be that shame and embarrassment that prevents us from admitting that they need that help. So we really need to work at being, I think, more proactive. And that means not putting responsibility on people to reach out when they're struggling. We always say that to people, reach out if you need help. But sometimes that's just will take more strength than they actually have. So please reach out to the parents in your life and really check in and then support them in any way that you can.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome. Thank you.